if the greatest performance of your life also became your undoing? It was a quiet January afternoon in New York. Inside a modest Soho apartment, the Golden City buzzed just outside, but within those walls, time had stopped. A bedside lamp glowed faintly. A few prescription bottles lay scattered on the floor. And on the bed, a young man, still dressed in yesterday's clothes, lay motionless. Next to him, a tattered journal sat open, its final page scrawled with two haunting words, "Bye-bye." He wasn't just an actor, he was the actor. Unpredictable, intense, disarmingly vulnerable. The kind of performer who didn't just play characters, he became them. And when he became the Joker, something in him shifted. Some say it was the role of a lifetime. Others say it was a role that took his life. What happened in those final moments? Were they the accidental result of a fragile mind pushed too far? Or was it something deeper, a descent so complete into madness that the line between fiction and reality vanished? Heath Ledger's death stunned Hollywood, but what remains even more haunting than his passing is the eerie, lingering question. Did he become too good at playing madness? That he never found his way back? The glory before the darkness. Long before the world knew him as the Joker, Heath Ledger was the golden boy from Perth, Australia, restless, fearless, and already on a path that no one could predict. He wasn't born into Hollywood, nor did he chase fame in the traditional sense. Heath had a kind of wild energy, the type that couldn't be tamed. At 17, he left home with a friend, packed in a beaten-down car, and drove across Australia to chase a vague idea of something more. What he found was not just success, it was legend in the making. By the early 2002, Heath Ledger had become a heartthrob. 10 Things I Hate About You made him a teen idol, but that wasn't enough. He despised being typecast. So he ran in the only way true artists know how, toward danger, depth, and complexity. In Monsters Ball, he shocked critics with his quiet breakdown. Then came Brokeback Mountain, and the world saw what Heath had always known. He was born not to charm, but to devastate. He was nominated for an Oscar at just 26. Hollywood hailed him as the next Marlon Brando. Directors praised his ability to lose himself inside a role. But Heath didn't bask in glory, he kept moving. Faster, deeper, darker. Then came 2006, when Christopher Nolan approached him with a proposition. "I want you to play the Joker." The announcement sent shockwaves. Fans protested Heath Ledger as the Joker. It sounded like a mistake. But Nolan saw something the world didn't. A man with the nerve, the nuance, and the raw nerve endings to become something unforgettably deranged. Ledger didn't just accept the challenge, he disappeared into it. For 6 weeks, he locked himself in a hotel room. No distractions, no visitors, just a voice recorder, makeup sketches, and a journal. The journal he would later call Joker's Diary. In public, he smiled less. He spoke slower. In interviews, his eyes seemed distant. Something was shifting, like a storm gathering behind calm eyes. He once told the New York Times, "I slept maybe 2 hours a night. My body was exhausted, but my mind wouldn't shut off." What the world didn't know then was that the role would become so iconic, so world-altering that it would define him forever. But by the time The Dark Knight was complete, the man who gave the Joker his voice was already starting to lose his own. Part 3, The Tragedy, a death and its unsolved mysteries. The silent prophecy. Heath had always been intense, but in the months following The Dark Knight, something in him had changed. He confided in close friends that he couldn't sleep. "My mind's a circus," he once said. Nights blurred into mornings. He was prescribed a mix of Ambien, Restorol, and other sedatives. But even then, he wandered his apartment in the dead of night, sketching, scribbling, pacing. Rest was a distant dream. Heath began carrying a weathered black notebook wherever he went. It wasn't a journal, it was the Joker's. Inside were disturbing clippings, photos of hyenas, serial killers, crime scene diagrams, even phrases scrawled repeatedly like a child's chant. Why so serious? Michelle Williams, his former partner and mother of his daughter, noticed the distance growing. Heath spoke less, stayed indoors more, and when he did appear, his voice was hollow. One evening, she asked him if he was all right. He just smiled faintly and said, "I'm not me these days." To the outside world, he was simply preparing for roles. But those closest to him began to sense something else, a quiet unraveling. A man drifting further from shore, too deep in character, and no longer sure where the mask ended and the man began. The 22nd of January, 2008. A gray Tuesday in Manhattan. That morning, Heath Ledger missed his massage appointment. The therapist arrived at his loft on Broome Street and knocked. No answer. She called his phone. Still nothing. She tried the door, it was unlocked. Inside, the apartment was oddly still. The lights were on, though the morning sun filtered softly through half-drawn blinds. Heath was lying in bed, face down, the covers pulled loosely over him as if he'd fallen asleep reading. On the nightstand, several prescription bottles, one open, one nearly empty, a half-drunk glass of water, and beside it, a notebook open to a final page that read, simply, "Bye-bye." The therapist called Mary Kate Olsen, Heath's close friend, who immediately dispatched her private security to the scene while the therapist called 911. When paramedics arrived, they found no pulse. Heath had been dead for some time. The image was harrowing. A 8-year-old man, on the verge of becoming the most iconic villain in cinema, now frozen in his final moment unshaven, alone, and bathed in morning light that no longer reached him. It didn't feel like a tragedy born of chaos. It felt quiet, intentional, as if he had slipped away without a scream. The news broke within hours. Heath Ledger found dead in New York City. Headlines flooded the internet. CNN ran it as breaking news. Twitter, in its early days, exploded. Fans wept openly outside his Soho apartment. Within 4 hours, flowers, notes, candles, and photographs covered the sidewalk. Some dressed as the Joker in silent tribute. Michelle Williams, shielded from cameras, flew in with their 2-year-old daughter, Matilda. She said nothing to the press, but friends revealed she was devastated. "He was more than the father of my child," she told a friend. "He was the most alive person I knew." Christopher Nolan was reportedly speechless. The Dark Knight was in post-production. Heath had given them a performance that would redefine superhero cinema. Now, the man behind it was gone. The Academy scrambled to determine eligibility. Months later, Ledger would win the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor posthumously. His family accepted the award. The room fell silent. But in that moment, applause felt hollow, because the cost of that brilliance had already been paid. The coroner's report was clear: accidental overdose. A lethal cocktail of oxycodone, hydrocodone, diazepam, temazepam, alprazolam, and doxylamine. All legal, all prescribed. But why so many? Some claimed it was an unfortunate mix, doctors unaware of overlapping prescriptions. Others believed Heath, unable to sleep, had simply miscalculated. But a darker theory lingered. Had the Joker driven him to this? Christopher Nolan later said in an interview, "Heath was fearless, but he went so deep into the role, it scared us." And yet, no one had intervened. Mary Kate Olsen, linked controversially to the 911 call, was investigated briefly, but no foul play was found. Still, the circumstances remained murky. Why was she called before 911? Why did Ledger seem prepared to go, with his affairs oddly in order? Then there was the journal, full of chaos, sketches, haunting quotes, and that final page, "Bye-bye." Was it a farewell, or just part of the character? No one could say for sure. And perhaps that was the cruelest trick, the Joker's final joke, leaving the world guessing. 3,50, The Empty Room, A Final Comma, 274. The apartment was eventually cleaned, the bed stripped, the light bulbs replaced. But one image lingered, the room frozen in time, as if still holding its breath. A desk with pages of unused scripts. A wall covered in Polaroids. Drawings of clowns taped loosely beside headshots from his auditions. The Joker diary, closed and left behind. And that same lamp, still softly glowing, even after everyone had left. Among his belongings was a postcard from Michelle, addressed to Heathy. It had never been sent. On it, In ink slightly smudged, she had written, "Come back to us soon." He never did. That room would never see him again. The role was over, the performance complete. But the silence it left behind was unbearable. No applause, no encore, just a young man, gone too soon, in a world too fast to understand him. The echoes behind the curtain. The world didn't just lose a star that day, it lost something rarer. A soul unfiltered, untamed, and entirely irreplaceable. In the weeks after his death, Heath Ledger's absence echoed like a dropped note in the middle of a symphony. His name dominated headlines, but it was in the quiet moments an old interview replayed on television, a half-finished project left hanging where the true weight of the loss was felt. Michelle Williams remained silent in public, but in private, she struggled to explain to their daughter, Matilda, why her father wasn't coming home. A friend later revealed, she said she felt like he was stolen, like time itself had been robbed. Christopher Nolan, finishing The Dark Knight, edited the final cut with a heavy heart. Heath's performance as the Joker was unlike anything the genre had seen: magnetic, unpredictable, terrifying. Nolan would later say, "It was as if he cracked open the character and let something spill out that none of us were prepared for." The cast and crew dedicated the film to his memory. And when it premiered, audiences wept not just for the chaos on screen, but for the man who had become the chaos so completely. Then came the awards season. Ledger was nominated across the board: SAG, BAFTA, the Golden Globes, and then the Oscar. It was a moment frozen in time. As his name was announced, the camera cut to his parents and sister accepting the award. There were no grand speeches, just tears, nods, and the words, "This award belongs to Heath. We only wish he were here to accept it himself." Beyond the trophies and accolades, there were unfinished chapters. He had just started directing. He was reading scripts for future roles. There was talk of him playing Napoleon, of working with Scorsese, of stepping away from Hollywood entirely to raise his daughter in Australia. All of it gone in a single night. His friends described him as gentle chaos, a contradiction wrapped in laughter, anxiety, brilliance, and warmth. Jake Gyllenhaal, his co-star in Brokeback Mountain, admitted in an interview, "It makes me angry, because I knew what more he could have done, and the world never will." The industry moved forward, as it always does. But something remained broken. Every time The Dark Knight played in theaters, every time a new actor stepped into the Joker's shoes, comparisons were made not out of competition, but out of reverence. Because deep down, everyone knew this performance had cost more than just effort. It had cost a life. The final whisper from the past. Heath Ledger's death wasn't loud. It wasn't scandalous. It was a quiet departure, one that slipped into the morning unnoticed, like the fading of a dream just before waking. He didn't leave a note, no grand farewell, just a journal filled with madness, a daughter too young to understand, and a performance that would echo far beyond the confines of a movie screen. And that's what makes his final moments so haunting, not because of how he died, but because of what he left behind. A question, not one written on paper, but one etched in every frame of The Dark Knight, in every glance he gave the camera, every twisted smile beneath the smudged clown paint. How far must an artist go to become unforgettable? We speak often of brilliance, of actors who lose themselves in a role. But what if the losing becomes permanent? What if there's no line left to cross back over? In chasing authenticity, Heath dove deeper than anyone expected, and perhaps deeper than anyone should. He didn't just play the Joker, he absorbed him. And in doing so, he gave us something immortal, terrifying, beautiful, but it came at a price. As the curtain fell on his life, there was no applause, only the soft glow of a bedside lamp, still on, long after he was gone. And just like that, the lights faded, forever.